So welcome, Nandini, and it's a pleasure to have you on our first vlog on performance management for the retail frontline employees. Um, from our research, we sort of figured out that there is so little on the internet when you go and read about performance management for the retail frontline. While there's a lot written on performance management itself, but I think the industry itself has very little knowledge. So idea was to start a conversation with people like you to share the knowledge with the industry and see if we can sort of contribute from our end. That's the whole idea of it. We'll take, I think, for next 10 to 15 minutes and keep it really short and sweet so that people can also sort of gain a lot of it in a very short span of time. I was also looking at your LinkedIn profile. Of course, I keep looking at it, but this time, what caught my eyes was that you started your career with Will's Lifestyle as a customer facilitator in 1999, and then now 21 years down the line, you are head of HR, heading Lifestyle and Home Center with the Landmark Group, and also you have a B.Ed degree, which I think is a very rare combination. Not a lot of training guys have an education degree, especially in our country. So it's very, very interesting. I would quickly maybe open this platform for you to introduce yourself, and then maybe we can begin.
Sure. So thank you, Ronald, for inviting me over, for this session. And within the time that we have, I'll try and cover whatever possible. So first, quickly to introduce myself, like you rightly said, I have 21 years of experience, of which 18 is in retail and various facets of retail, from operations to training to HR. So I think it's been an amazing journey for me. And it's been about 12 years since I've been with the Landmark Group. Most of those 12 years have been with Max. And it's recently that I moved into a larger role with Lifestyle and Home Center. So I think, the journey has been amazing, lot of learnings. But I think, one of the biggest, I would say, something which is not very easy to crack is, like you rightly said, how do we manage the performance of the frontline staff? Biggest challenge, or rather I wouldn't say challenge, but what I've seen as something which people have not been able to crack is how do we monitor the performance of our frontline staff. From being a frontline staff to today managing the performance of the frontline staff, I still haven't really found a 100% answer to this question. But broadly, if I look at it, these are the staff who they're expected to do probably 4 or 5 critical things, right? And out of those 4 or 5 deliverables is where we achieve our business. So it becomes very critical that we monitor them closely. We have a structured way of looking at how are they performing and how can we grow them in the system. So broadly, any organization that has frontline staff will realize that 70% of the churn is happening at the lowest cadre of people, right? Because they come from a lower economic background. They do not see careers from a long-term perspective. Anyone offers them, let's say, even a 300 rupees more than what they're earning today, they don't mind, leaving and joining another organization. So it becomes very critical for organizations to show them a career path, to actually work with them to build their careers and make them grow in the organization. So even if you see the operations team, you would see most of the territory heads or area managers normally have grown from that, the CSR level.
Correct.
And that is because probably somewhere someone picked them up and helped them grow, right? So how can we do this for a larger group is always is a big question. And I think if we have a structured framework where we are able to monitor some of their activities to start off with, and tell them that they're good in this or not so good still in this, keep giving them regular feedback, and at least try and invest in the ones who are really good. I think a lot can be achieved out of it, and we can get people within the organization rather than hiring from outside at various levels wherever we have a requirement. So I think in a nutshell, this is what I would call as something we can look at. While of course it still remains a question as to how do we do that. Yeah.
Sure. So, ma'am, I have seen you championing the whole performance management very, very passionately with Max and now at Lifestyle. From your experience, why is it even important from a frontline perspective and from a business or corporate perspective? What are some of your learnings on why is this important?
So, when we started this journey, Landmark itself was at about 80% attrition overall, and we had this big challenge about how do we reduce our attrition. And when this challenge was put forth to us, I thought, there has to be something which we need to do. So we actually did a complete analysis of our attrition trends, and we realized, like I was mentioning earlier also, that the maximum attrition is happening in the front line. And the cost of recruitment is much higher than the retention of an employee. Yeah. So I started thinking about how do we work on this, and that is when we came up with this whole idea of a career passport for Max. And typically we thought, we should look at how do we go about monitoring these people, like I was mentioning, assessing and evaluating them, and trying to move people internally rather than hiring outside. And especially in operations, we have quite a lot of hierarchy. We have CSRs, then we have a senior CSR, then we have supervisors and department managers, then we have assistant store managers, store managers. So there's a big hierarchy, and then there are verticals also like cashiering, inventory, VM. So we could look at growing these people based on their interest into any domain that they would want to. And I think it, like I was mentioning, for them, what is important is not jumping jobs, because if they're going to do that, they're going to get stuck in the same role and not really grow beyond a point. And for us, it becomes very critical because, like I was mentioning, it's very easy to just let go of people. But when we are hiring them back, there is a huge cost involved, because you then have to train them, you have to monitor them on the floor, you have to get them to reach a productivity level which the person who had left might have already been there. Right. So I think this is very critical from an organization's perspective. And like I said, for an individual, it also is about aspiring and growing with the company. So I would look at it from that perspective. Yeah.
Sure. So, what I understand is from my conversations with you, you were able to design a career passport which tracked the entire journey of an employee, of a frontline employee in your organization, and also tracked their performance management, which then helped them to move further and so on. While you were implementing this, or even after the implementation, what were one of your biggest challenges, and how did you overcome it?
Sure. So I think when we started the career passport, I was in training. I was handling the training profile. And, when you're handling a training profile, you don't look at HR as a whole or business as a whole with HR, with training, right? So the whole career passport was built around only training interventions.
Sure.
And somewhere I realized it wasn't working. So, when I moved into the role of HR is where I realized why it was not working. I realized that if it is only training, nobody is interested. But if you have, let's say, the person's KPIs mapped, let's say the person's tenure and growth path with the organization is mapped, plus, of course, some of the training interventions that they go through, then there is a buy-in from the business, there is a buy-in from HR, and there is also, the training element to it. So we changed the career passport, and we made it more in terms of reviews on a quarterly basis, monitoring the KPIs. But we started this when we were about 2,000 odd employees, and our organization has been growing very fast. And in no time we were about 5,000 plus employees, and it becomes very difficult to monitor all this manually, right? So these were hard copies of career passports. They were not digitized. And I think the biggest challenge we had was standardization, because some stores would do it, some stores would not do it. Some managers were passionate about it, some were not. And apart from all that, for the trainers also to monitor and track how much is being done, how much is not being done, doing the audits, it was just next to impossible.
Absolutely.
That was the biggest challenge with the career passport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think at scale, standardization becomes important. At the same time, people being passionate at the ground level is also super important. Ma'am, if I have to now quickly jump into say, uh, if there are other people who are watching this video, especially from the apparel fashion industry, how would you advise them to design a performance management for the frontline staff? What are the three things to remember to design a very nice performance management plan?
Uh, I think one is to keep it simple.
Yes.
Because if you're going to complicate it too much, it's not going to give any results, right? And identify those two or three critical things that you're expecting the frontline to do, right? I think that is very, very important. Second is rather than actually monitoring the performance on an annual basis, we need to look at how do we do it regularly, at regular intervals, and try and document it in some kind of a platform, so that it becomes easier rather than having a pen and paper. Right now, most organizations for the frontline do have pen and paper, and even if it is not, it is a very I would say, I don't know how many managers would actually be having conversations with their employees, right?
So,
But if you're saying just these two, three things, closely monitoring them and ensuring that we give them regular inputs, or the other way of looking at it is how do we track whatever they have to do on a platform, through the year, and get a report end of the year, which will help us identify our, the good guys. So the way I look at an online platform for this would be multiple. One is identifying my top performers through a regular tracking, which could be a mix of training, it could be a mix of on the job work that they have to do. It could be, reviews of the managers or feedback of the managers on the employee. It could be regular evaluations on the platform with simple, maybe 4 5 questions that we ask them on their job and things like that. And of course, like I said, modules which are also online, simple ones, which are essential for them to know, like for example, a product module, or let's say processes. So I think that would help in terms of monitoring them. And I also feel, because that's a large chunk of people, there has to be a very simple way of giving them increments.
sure.
Right now it's like how we do for everybody else, but can we find out a simpler way of doing it, where we reward the top performers? And of course, if we have the system in place, we will also be able to identify the not so good performers as well, and be able to take action, right? And apart from that, I think how it can also help is, we can curb uh, our costs,
Yeah.
right? So I think that this, if we have something where we're able to monitor all this, I think this will help. So I think this becomes very, very important. Like I told you, the first piece is how do we simplify the entire KRAs, KPIs of the frontline staff. Second is how do we have a mechanism where we can monitor them through the year. And third is keep their increments simple and not complicated too much. So I think these would broadly be the three things we should look at.
Sure. Tom, I think a simple thing is something which I keep hearing from you, and I've seen myself on the whole career passport which you had designed. It's definitely simple. One of the myths which I keep hearing from a lot of HR heads, learning heads of retail companies is that if we have a very strong performance management, we are then liable to promote people immediately, right? How do we answer that myth? So because of this myth, a lot of them say we are going to have performance management, but not one which is very very evolved, so that employees don't come back and say, hey, now I am eligible, promote me. So how do we manage that, ma'am? And how have you come across to dealing with such a thing?
So I think while everybody says performance management is a very objective tool, and it is the only way where we can identify the high pose and grow them with the organization. I have a slightly different view. I think performance management tools that are there are very very subjective in most cases, and especially when it comes to the front line, it becomes very subjective because no one has a clue, right? With such a vast, it's a sea of employees there, so no one has a clue about what is the conversation that has happened, who are the actually good ones. We just have to blindly go by whatever their manager says. So, and plus of course there is this whole bell curve thing, so you have to fit in people within the bell curve because of the it's all of course finally linked to the finances of the organization. So I feel performance management is not very objective, neither is it very simple as people think it to be. That's my personal view. And I think if you want to make it very objective and very simple, the only way is to look at how do we have something where we can monitor whatever people are doing through the year. And it is not just about achieving the result, it is also about how they have achieved that result. Yeah. So the how piece becomes very very critical, which is where the competencies play a very critical role, which is where the values of the organization play a very critical role, which is where the deliverables of the role become very critical, right? Whereas we normally in a normal performance management system, we don't have a mechanism to track all this. All that we look at is numbers. Okay, have you completed this task within the time I've given you? Have you achieved the numbers which I have told you to achieve? It's all around that. Is the quality of work you've given as per what I had asked you to give? So it's all about that. But how did the person achieve the result? How did he or she deliver on time? Has he followed whatever the requirement is to get there? So that is something which we don't really track. So I think that is what will be a wholesome performance, and that cannot be done with just one conversation end of the year. It has to be tracked through the year.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think continuous monitoring, evaluation is something which is important, and that's what I'm taking away. So, ma'am, just to then bring all the conversations together, what we understand is that performance management is important because it helps employees at frontline to become more closer to what they're doing, become better at what they're doing, and also grow in the organization. It at certain level helps organizations to retain the right people because you're now able to figure out who are these really good performers. How do you work with them? And of course, you are also able to now figure out who are so not so good performers and start your intervention with them in terms of trainings, learnings, make your action plans. And of course, at the end of it becomes much cost effective to you because you have a much better performance management plan. So with this, sorry, ma'am, anything else?
No, I said absolutely. I think you just put it together pretty well. So.
Sure, ma'am. So, ma'am, with this, we come towards the end. Thank you so much for your time. Like I said, we want to keep it short so that I think attention of people nowadays has gone really, really down. So we didn't want to run like a 30-minute session.
Yeah.
But hopefully one day when we are able to run about 10 to 15 of such videos, we'd love to then get all of them on a bigger platform, from across the globe. To come and share on performance management. So thank you so much again, ma'am. I know it's Saturday afternoon and it's Diwali, so giving your time is we are very, very grateful to you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ronald. Thank you for inviting me over again. Thank you so much.